Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Release.
Come on, Brent. Line's good. Got real close. The hair high, right? Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham. Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. A little tired today.
Yeah, we had a big game last night. We were out late.
Yeah, a little bit of a BS win, perhaps.
I don't know. I was thinking about it a little bit today that we outplayed the team overall against whom we were playing. I had a few BS misses that I would say in one end where, it's that old thing of if I was trying to do that, I couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
And I picked out one of our own, but came back. We stayed in the game, heads down, focused, put together a couple of good ends and pulled the win out at the end. So it was fun.
Sure.
That's our first win in A, Sean.
It was. Yeah. Well, you know what they say, as we always say on the show, curling is a game of runs, and we went on a 5-0 run to win the game. Skips deuces, though, Scott, they are just part of the game. It's not great when you have the hammer and the other team gets a skips deuce. That doesn't make you feel great. But it happens. It's happened to us actually a couple of times in the last few weeks, unfortunately. But again, as you say, overall, I think as a team, we played pretty well. You made the ones that mattered, and we're in the winner's circle.
There you go, right? Make the ones that mattered. No pictures in the box score. So however you get there, you get there.
Absolutely. And that is what Brad Gushue is saying today, as well, as they are back on the rock, probably, at least two of them, celebrating their 5th Brier championship in the last 7 years for Brad Gushue. I tweeted this on Sunday night. It's hard to believe that 6 years and a week ago, we were sitting around wondering, is Brad Gushue ever going to win a Brier, as they were heading into that 2017 Brier there in St. John's, and now he has won 5 of the last 7. Really in the midst of 2 dynasties here in Canadian curling. Carrie Anderson, obviously, on the women's side. Brad Gushue here on the men's side. Scott, broad strokes here to start it off. A back-to-back championship for Brad Gushue. First time a skip has won 5 as a skip. Of course, Furby holds the record with 6 total.
Yep.
But Gushue now with the skipping record. What do you make of the week?
I think it played out pretty well how we thought it would. We talked on our preview about the top 4 and then a couple that maybe would have a chance to get in there. We didn't think about Northern Ontario in that breath, or maybe we did and just didn't mention it. But, the 4 that were there at the end were sort of the right 4 based on how the week played out. I guess we'll talk about Kevin Cooey later. Maybe you could argue him and his team.
Mm-hmm.
But, nobody's saying, there's one outlier that snuck in that definitely didn't belong there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't a Christina Black out of nowhere type thing, right? Christina Black made the playoffs. Depending on how you define make the playoff in this format. Right. Christina Black did make the playoffs last year. And then this year, obviously, getting to that 3-4 game, somewhat out of nowhere, though, a little bit, right? A team that's very good in building, but going into it, not a lot of attention on them. That wasn't necessarily the case for Mike McEwen. I think people were maybe not thinking they would make it into that 4 spot, but to get into those top 3 in the pool, I think that was a pretty reasonable expectation for that team.
Absolutely, yeah. Mike Skip, that's been in the Olympic trials finals. You're never going to count him out. So overall, the week played out pretty much like we thought. I believe I picked Brad Gushue to win. So that's heroes don't go out picking randoms, right? So I picked Canada to win both the Scotties and the Brier, and happened to be right this time. But you're right, it's a dynasty, and I talked on our last show about them having the edge going into the weekend because they had played with each other. At least 3 of them had played with each other before. And I really do think that was the difference in just being comfortable with each other, knowing how to read the ice and sort of make those adjustments in the game. They were just had that edge and being a little more familiar.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because if you look at the two games that they played on the weekend, both against Matt Dunstone, Saturday night in the 1-2 game, Sunday night in that final, you can potentially point that this is not to say that they did not play very well, because obviously they played extraordinarily well, but you can point to a couple tiny things that maybe you question Matt Dunstone on decision making, or certainly on execution in one case, which we'll talk about in the final, where there is so little room. And this is, I think, a credit to both of these teams, that when you look at the 8th end of the gold medal game and the 10th end of the 1-2 game, Matt Dunstone maybe missed 2 shots there by a combined centimeter. If you add the two of them together, he missed by so little in those 2 occasions and lost both of those games on really those 2 shots. And that's just how even the 2 teams were throughout the course of those 2 games. There's a stat that Vic mentioned in the final that in Brier play, they were 2-2 against each other, or 4-4 against each other. I think it must have been 2-2 against each other. And at the time, they were also tied in total score over those games, over the course of those games. So obviously they're playing each other very tight. It's really just this tiniest thing. And for that to be true, for a very small thing to be the difference in a game, both teams have to play very, very well. And Gushue just got the better side of it in this one. And he does that a lot because he's really, really good. And going into it, like the opening weekend, they weren't great. They didn't have it all together. They were missing more than you would expect. But then Saturday night, Sunday night, Marc Nichols was Marc Nichols, Gushue was Gushue, and the front end guys, EJ Harnden, Brett Gallant, in terms of sweeping, I'm not sophisticated enough to know if one is necessarily better than the other. They're both very, very good. I'll let you take the first pick, and I'll be fine with the second pick in that situation. So you're right. It's just a really good team top to bottom, and they played 2 exceptional games.
Yeah. Really, really good. And like you said, Sean, they took advantage of what few mistakes the Manitoba team made, right? Which wasn't very many. No. And we're just able to capitalize. It was pretty like textbook curling from Gushue.
Yeah, so let's talk about one of those potential mistakes in the 8th end of the final. This is a tie game, 3-3, and I think most people, and I think probably even rightly, would look at Matt Dunstone's last shot that over curls by a millimeter and gives Brad Gushue an in-turn hit for the 3. And if Dunstone makes that shot, Gushue can blast it maybe for 2, probably just has a shot for 1. So it's fair to look at that shot. I'm more interested, though, in the shot before that shot, where Dunstone is coming down. The situation is Brad Gushue is shot Stone at one that's in the 4-foot at like 5 o'clock ish. Might be closer to 6 o'clock in that position. Matt Dunstone is second shot behind a corner guard at about 10 o'clock. And he's not quite frozen, maybe about a foot difference between him and a Gushue stone. And then there's one above that in the 12-foot around 11, 10 o'clock in that range. And Dunstone decides to come down, hit his own, and try to roll over. So you kill a Gushue stone and then have his shooter roll over in front of, or at least in the direction of, shot stone. And then he is sitting 2 and 3, and he's a little protected. The Gushue stone is behind the tee line. I have absolutely no problem with the call at all. It just over curled on him. And he rolls off, but not enough, leaves a relatively straightforward double that Brad Gushue is able to make. And that prompts the 3 in that situation. So for as much as you can look at the final shot, and yes, the final shot was off by just a little bit, it's that big weight one that you would expect Matt Dunstone to have. And again, he misses it by a millimeter. because with how hard he throws it, if it under curls just a little less, he's getting that much more separation. It's probably flatter, or it's coming all the way into the shot stone or in front of the shot stone, and Gushue does not have that shot. Like, this sport is just so cruel sometimes, but that's a shot that it's very much in Matt Dunstone's wheelhouse. You expect him to make it, and again, the quote unquote miss. I would love to miss that way, by the way. On the last one, I don't think it's as consequential as the over curl on the first one in the eighth end.
Yeah, I think you're right. The over curl setting up that double, and it was like just enough to give to let Gushue sit the three. I'm just watching the replay now, and he didn't even make a full double. Like, the second one didn't get over and out, but it got out enough that they were able to sit three. And then the Dunstone miss was very surprising, because I thought, okay, he's got that double queued up, no big deal, but wasn't to be. No.
So an unfortunate turn of events there in the eighth end for Matt Dunstone. That's the difference. They do get a 2-back in the ninth, and then force Gushue to draw against the loss potentially in the 10th end, which I thought was a pretty good feat for them. You would expect that Gushue would probably have to draw against the tie, but to have him be drawing against the win, it's not really much better you can do in a 10th end.
No, exactly. And it's, drawing the 4-foot at the end of a long game through a pretty tight hole. It's not like it was a free side or anything. He did have to navigate a port and make it. So Wade had to be good. Sweepers had to know the path, especially at that time of the game. Team Dunstone did all they could do. Matt himself shot 88%. They played well. It was that one little miss. And I was just watching again, Sean, Matt Dunstone's last in 8. Like, as he was rolling over towards the shot rock, it looked like it just took one of those little gear turns right at the end. Boom. Okay, drink. And maybe the sharpness of the rocks in that instance really just came back to bite him, because it looked like it was rolling right onto the stone and then just took a little turn. So some bad luck in addition to a little bit of an under or over curl. So,
which it's just really too bad too, because if you go to the 10th end on Saturday night, Matt Dunstone's last, he elects to hit his own stone in the back of the 4-foot. Gushue's shot stone in the front of the 4-foot. Dunstone has to make a very precise nose hit. We talked about this last week. We were like, oh, nose hits. And they're 2 round objects. That's really hard to do. And Dunstone under curls in that case. So Saturday night, he misses on an under curl. Sunday night, he misses on over curls in the 8th end. Just this, and again, combined probably the 3 shots a centimeter total. Like, this game is just so mean sometimes to you. And he might have overthrown the one Saturday night a little bit, compared to what they had said for Wade. But that was an interesting one too, Scott, because I watched it back today, the 10th end. I think maybe he could have picked the Gushue stone out. He played on the intern side. If he throws something hard-ish, like an easy peel on the outturn side, the other side of the sheet, maybe he could have picked it across the top of his own because there was enough space.
Yeah.
And again, given Matt Dunstone's strength, maybe that was the call, but he saw that hit right away. First thing he saw, like, this, I like this, I'm going to make this.
Yeah, that was the first thing he saw. And so in that case, you want to go with the skip's gut, right?
Yeah.
And
there's nothing in his way there too. The pick, you got to worry about guards and all that. Like, this was just an open hit, and just didn't get it done. So for Matt Dunstone and his team, obviously a very good showing. They only lost to Brad Gushue. They beat everybody else who they played. So a solid week and a solid performance for them. And moving forward, you got to like their chances.
Oh yeah, big time. We'll talk about what the future of Canadian high performance curling is in a little bit, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot over the next year or so. Matt Dunstone is sort of what I would say is the horse to bet on if you're curling Canada and looking to keep going and invest at the men's level. This is your guy.
And I'll say too, the Dunstone family is good TV. They, Matt Dunstone is an expressive guy. We've seen that before. And we now know, if at least I didn't know this before, I don't think they had shown his family as much in past events as they did this weekend. He certainly gets it honestly. And his family was very entertaining. And again, it's awful that it was in a bad moment for him, but he had the exact same reaction to the final shot in the 10th end Saturday night on the ice as his dad did in the crowd.
Yeah.
And his grandmother was there, like reaching out, grabbing people as it's coming down. Like, that's good TV. Unfortunate for them that was a negative moment, or not the most positive of moments, but Sunday afternoon when they won that semifinal, you got to see the positive side of the expressiveness of that family.
Yeah, absolutely. Very fun to watch.
And speaking of family, we should mention that the Harndens did play against each other. They, of course, have won a Brier together. They've won an Olympic gold medal together, played against each other in a Brier final. Really cool moment with their father afterwards. Very emotional for the two of them to play against each other. And Scott, we've never played each other in an actual game before.
No.
And, you're my brother. I want you to do well in life. But I also choose to believe that if we were playing against each other, I would figuratively want to step on your throat and beat you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I was thinking about this today because I just watched Saturday Night Live with Travis Kelce hosting, and I was like, who got more plugs about brother against brother? Was it the Kelce brothers in the Super Bowl, or was it the Harndens in the Brier final? I'm not sure which one was said more on air, but really cool thing to watch. Obviously, Ryan even getting emotional like at the presser after the semifinal, right? Pretty cool to see that. But you're right. Yeah, Sean, I would want to destroy you and be the one buying you a beer after the game.
That's right. You play to win the game.
You play to win the game.
We can be family after the game.
Exactly. Yeah.
But a very, very cool moment there for the Harndens. Somebody threw out, I can't remember who it was, but somebody threw out on Twitter that they should invite Ryan Harden to be the fifth for the Worlds, which would be a cool thing to have him there. I don't know if they would, because potentially you want someone who has experience in multiple positions to be a fifth in that spot.
Yeah.
But I would venture a guess that Ryan Harnden and Mr. Harnden will make an appearance in Ottawa at some point during the week.
I would think so. Did Gushue's team have a fifth or no?
They had Flaxy with them. I don't know if he was listed as the coach or the alternate.
Yeah, he was their coach.
Okay.
So, anyway.
Well, Brad Gushue, he demonstrated last year he doesn't need no fifth.
Yeah, you can play with three, right?
Yeah. So another couple things here, Scott, from the playoffs, both in the 1-2 game and then again in the semifinal. We saw teams blank multiple ends to take the hammer into the 10th. So Dunstone blanked 7, 8, 9 on Saturday night. Botcher blanked 8 and 9 on Sunday afternoon to hold the hammer into the 10th. Both of them lost. And this is the first year with the tick rule, or the no tick rule, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
How much do you think that factored in? Obviously, there's going to be statistical anomalies here and there, and it's certainly better to have the hammer than not have the hammer in a tie game. But it is just curious to think that if that math changes from 95% or whatever it was down to, say, let's go crazy and say it gets down to even 60%. Maybe that changes the way people approach the end game leading into the 10th end.
It might do, yeah. It might behoove somebody to, keep the hammer or give up the hammer for a lead early. But in this case, both of those teams were tied, right? So they wanted to keep the hammer when they're tied into that 10th end. If they were down one, I think it might have been a different story. But all that said, looking at the way those 10th ends played out, both of the teams that had the hammer had a chance to win. They had shots. So as much as the no-tick rule might have given them, stuff in play that maybe they wouldn't have had, they might have been, able to tick things over and have a bit of a more open last shot. Both of them did have what I'd say pretty makeable shots to win, right? Botcher had a draw, was just light. It wasn't an easy draw, but it was a draw to win. And Dunstone we talked about already with that sort of easy board weight nose hit. So I don't know if that's enough to move the needle. That's more results oriented. But if you look at the process was correct in that they had shots that they felt comfortable about to win the game.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think Dunstone was in a tougher spot than Botcher was Saturday night to Sunday afternoon. And yeah, you just don't expect Brendan Botcher to miss a draw that much. He missed it by 5 or 6 feet, which if I miss a draw by 5 or 6 feet, great. Having a good night. But yeah, you don't expect that from Brendan Botcher, especially with those two guys sweeping for him. Yeah. So yeah, we don't have enough information on it. Certainly we'll have to see. But I think what was also surprising about the Botcher one is that they had made such a big deal all week about how the ice was so good at holding up through the course of these games that it wasn't slowing down the way you normally see. And then he comes up short again in a spot you wouldn't expect him to. So that's something to monitor moving forward. If the end game math changes a little bit, because it seems like they're starting to think in the 7th, 8th end already about maybe let's start blanking, and maybe that math changes to, okay, maybe we'll just really want to score in 8 because we know we can force in 9 or sort of thing. Or, it'll just be interesting to see how this affects end game strategy. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Brendan Botcher, a bronze medal finish for them in their first Brier together. Played really well, Scott. The only note I had from the 3-4 game, and I don't mean this as a slight to Team Ontario and Mike McEwen, I never felt that they could win that game once it started. And that's because I'm more convinced now than ever that Marc Kennedy might be a robot.
Yeah, Marc Kennedy was pretty effing good in that game, making hits and rolls to like exact perfect spots. There was even the one that it was like a accidental triple.
Yeah. The accidental double to the freeze.
Yeah, the double to the freeze. That's it.
That was insane.
Yeah, because it just hit like the exact right way to come back, and then boom, glued on the rock. And at that point, what can you do but shake your head, right?
Yeah.
This guy, his curling robot skills should not be denied. I thought the Team McEwen, they stayed in it, and they were in it for longer than I thought they would be, getting some misses, I'd say, out of Brendan Botcher. But at the end of it, it was just too much. And Ryan Fry announced today that he's stepping away from that Team McEwen. So we'll see what happens with those guys next year and see what the future for them will be.
Yeah, because obviously they already had the change with Jonathan Buke no longer being on the team and Joey Hart stepping in. The other thing, I think one of the reasons they were in that game, though, despite how well Marc Kennedy was playing, is that Brent Lang was playing on his head too.
Yeah,
he was remarkable in that
really
game.
Good.
So that was a really fun game. But yeah, it just felt to me that Kennedy was just in control of the game the whole time and wasn't going to let Mike McEwen win that day. And he did not let Mike McEwen win that day. But yeah, good run for McEwen, good run for Botcher, first year together. At a Brier, you'd certainly expect them to be in the mix moving forward. And another team that you'd expect to be in the mix moving forward, Kevin Cooey. They finish second in their pool. They lose the seeding game on Friday afternoon to the aforementioned Mike McEwen and are eliminated. Now, this actually brought up not even a debate. I didn't engage with it. I debated it in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Did Kevin Cooey make the playoffs? Statistically, this actually potentially not matters, but it's an interesting stat. Did they make the playoffs?
Yeah, I guess you'd have to say no, right? Depends what your definition of playoffs is, and I guess like if you think of the top four are in the playoffs, then yeah, like if I go to Tim Hortons Brier standings draw and I click playoffs, well, I guess they're in it.
They're in the
page
playoffs.
Qualification.
Yeah, that counts as the playoffs for Curling Canada. They missed the page portion of the playoffs, but I would say they were in the playoffs.
Okay.
I mean, if it's a single elimination game, it's a playoff. Yeah. Quite literally, it is like you're playing off. It's also postseason, if you will, if you want to go with that route. No, it was just about, is it fair potentially for a team to have only lost 2 games and then be out before the page portion of the playoffs? I would say, independent of who it is, that yeah, it is fair. That that's the format. This is the playoffs. Like, if you want to just say round robin and top record wins, I'm okay. I'm not going to be upset with that. I think you could make a very strong argument that actually gets you the best team each year and is a better way to decide if you want the absolute best team to go through. But you could also go through completely undefeated and then lose. Matt Dunstone only lost 2 games over the course of the week. If he had won Saturday night, lost Sunday night, he would have only lost 1 game. Like, that's sort of the way it works. And this is another pet peeve thing that I have with sports fans, where they're saying, and this comes up in the NHL discussion with the format of the playoffs. You're like, oh, well, you don't want to play that team in the first round. Who cares when you play them? You're going to have to beat them if you want to win. Like, you do it now, you do it later. Who effing cares? Just go out and win. And if you lose in the portion of the schedule that is the playoffs, that is an elimination game, then you lost and you're out. So I don't feel too bad for anyone who loses in that seeding game. I don't like that we go from an elimination game to Friday Fun Fest, where they're not elimination games, just narratively. I don't like that. But I don't feel too bad that there's an elimination game immediately after the round robin play, particularly because that's how it's going to be at the Worlds. That's how it is at the Olympics. That's how it is at every other event. So if you took away the Friday Fun Fest, yeah, it's probably a little better narratively to have that just be an elimination game. But I don't know. It's just something that came up, and I was like, yeah, he made the playoffs and he lost. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah. So if you eliminate Friday night and put, say, the 3-4 game or the 1-2 game Friday night, so that everybody's on the ice for the same amount of time, right?
Yeah.
And then I think that's what they used to do, is have the semifinal, or the 3-4 game, and then the semifinal on Saturday, and then do Sunday afternoon final.
Yeah, back in the CBC days.
Yes, that would be the other way to do it. I think, Sean, something we'll talk about in the summer is format ideas for these national championships. We'll brainstorm. We'll, go out to the rest of the curling community and see what everyone thinks, and try to come together with what's the best format. Because, like you say, it's not great, but we can't think of anything better right now. So,
yeah, with the caveat of being better for me, including not making this longer, because I think it's long enough, not losing any revenue for the event either. And if you were to, say, have a draw the Saturday morning and then say, okay, well, we're going to either expand the playoffs or have a little championship pool. You could have the top 3 go through. You play the 3 teams from the other pool that have gone through. The problem with that is you're sacrificing any opportunity for tiebreakers.
Yeah.
Or you're losing Thursday night as a draw if there's no tiebreakers, which you don't really want to do that. And then
No.
you'd have to play potentially 3 games on Friday, or you're finishing the championship pool Saturday morning, which you really don't want to do that either. Again, there's no time for tiebreakers. So in terms of the logistics of it, you don't want to do that because I don't want to go back to the days where the round robin finished on Friday morning.
Yeah.
That was awful when that was the case.
Yeah.
So, you want a scenario where, yes, the teams are treated as fairly as possible. And yes, ideally it's a perfectly fair system, which I understand the case that this is not entirely fair. But at the same time, it is partly a TV show and a revenue generating device for Curling Canada. And those factors have to be taken into account while also recognizing that Curling Canada, I don't think, and this is not something that anyone from Curling Canada has ever said to me, but they're not really rooting for upsets either.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want a system that if you get rid of the page, like the page offers a little bit of protection potentially against the super upset from happening, because they want whoever's going to go represent Canada at the World Championship to be one of, if not the best team.
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. If the system is in place the way we have it now, all of those things have to be considered.
Yeah. So I'm not crazy about this format for the playoffs, but I can't think of a better one given the parameters that I think exist.
Yeah. So again, like we'll put our thinking hats on and do our best to come up with something better in the summer when we don't have anything else to think about.
There you go. And just on Kevin Cooey, I think they had a really good week for them. Kevin Cooey managed to finish at least one game with more than a minute left. So I assume he was taken immediately to hospital for evaluation after that, just to make sure everything was okay. But he also threw one with under 5 seconds left. So yeah, he's going to do that. So good week for them. Tyler Tardy certainly did not look out of place.
No, he was second team All-Star this week. Yeah, it was the second or third highest skip. I guess second if you're on the second team. Vice skip rather. Yeah, no, they were fine. Tyler Tardy's going to be one of these next standard bearers for the next, say, 12 years going forward. So yeah, good for Brier.
And another team or individual, at least, that might be part of that group is Tanner Horgan, his Northern Ontario team. They come through only losing to the teams that were ahead of them in the pool play, and then lost on Friday afternoon to Brendan Botcher. That game kind of got out of hand a little early. TSN stuck with it the whole time. Interesting choice. Didn't bother me. I understood why they did it. But this team, Scott, it's hard to believe sometimes that Darren Moulding was excused from Team Botcher. Now, the lineup that Brendan Botcher has now, no one's going to argue with that lineup. It's a very, very good lineup. But Darren Moulding is just such a positive person, and at least on the ice, I've never met him outside of a curling context. He just has a personality that makes me as a viewer be like, I'd like to play with that guy.
No, I don't think you're wrong, Sean. It's it's hard to say like, oh, he didn't fit on our team because he was like a negative presence, right? So like you say, not going to argue with the team that he's put together, but Moulding acquitted himself really well. I was thinking, oh, is this going to be a bit awkward seeing them in the house against each other? But no, I think they buried everything and it's all good. And Darren sort of let his curling do the talking this week, and he had a really, really good week. So yeah, one of the good players. What's going to happen next with Tanner Horgan in that rink? Who knows? With Colin Hodgson sitting down for a while, what happens to Darren? Does he, try to find another team in Alberta, or continue as the curling troubadour wandering the country? Have Broom will play third.
Well, Adam Casey, I don't think ever has gotten his Northern Ontario jersey yet. He's lingering out there, and he will also travel for opportunity, as we have seen. I think, for as much as I would joke about that, I kind of like Adam Casey on that team. If that were to come together, that is something I was thinking through the week, because Colin Hodgson had announced at the start of the week that he was done. So I'm trying to think, like, who would be a good fit on that team, and I just kept thinking Casey would be a good fit, because Jacob Horgan and Tanner Horgan aren't super vocal out there. Hodgson is. He's chatting all the time. Darren is chatting all the time, and that was kind of Casey's thing, or is Casey's thing too out there. He likes to chat a lot. I don't know if it was a little harder for him with Gunnar, because that's how Gunnar is too. But between the two of them, they were always going. And I just thought that could be an interesting mix for them if that were to be an option.
That could be interesting, yeah. And sort of while we're on it, Sean, Jacob Horgan had himself a week.
Yeah.
He was +6 on the week, tops amongst the seconds, cumulative average shooting percentage of 86 for a Brier rookie who's like 22 or something. Pretty good.
Yeah, you're not going to be upset about that.
Did a good job sweeping too. I thought his sweeping was really good.
Yeah. I just get back to the Botcher and molding thing. There was a moment in that game Friday afternoon, someone had touched a rock or something had happened.
Yeah.
And they had to put it back. And Darren was saying to the official something like, "Oh, I think it was second shot." And I think it matters that if it was second shot. Yeah. And then he looks back and he says something to Brendan Botch. He's like, "Yeah, Brendan, I just don't want to take it. We want to make sure." Like, and I thought that would have been a funny moment in jest for Brendan Botcher just to be like, "I don't trust you, Darren." Like, kind of lean into it, he chose not to. He chose to go pure class. A little different from how I would have done it. So
yeah, he's not full heel turning just yet. But missed opportunity.
But yeah, overall, really good week for Tanner Horgan. Again, for two rookies as principals on that team, a very solid performance for them. So when you look at those 6 playoff teams, really great weeks. They were the class of the field. 3 losses was too many in the pool play. And those 6 just really equated themselves quite well. The top 4 were still a step ahead of the other 2, but it was, the cream really rose this week in London.
Absolutely. So last thing, Sean.
One more. Just one other quick note before we get to the last thing, Scott. We've mentioned along the way, Hodgson announced before the Brier started, he's going to step away. Fry announced today, Tuesday, as we record this, that he is going to step away. Made it sound like a retirement type of a post. I wish them both well if they are, in fact, stepping away. But we have seen so many of these stepping away statements where people have come back. And I haven't talked to either of them, so I don't know. But I am just eternally skeptical about the pure step away at this point, particularly just the way the Olympic cycle works and the changes that can be made and have been made leading into an Olympic year. And the other reason I might be slightly skeptical, 2 words for you there, Scott. Mike Fournier.
Yeah, it's never over till it's over. These guys are curling junkies, so we'll see if it crops up again.
Yes, but of course, if this is the end of the line for them at the Elite 4-person level, both of them have been very good players for a long time, wonderful careers, and we wish them the best in their post-elite curling lives.
Absolutely, we do.
All right, now let's get to our final point here, Scott, and that is that David Murdoch, the new high-performance leader, I don't know, what is his title, director?
Whatever.
High-performance guy at Curling Canada, was there in London taking in all the action, did a short session with the media over the course of the week, but mostly I think was there to observe, and that, of course, brings the question of, we know this is the last Tim Hortons Brier. Is this going to be the last Brier under this format with all of the member associations represented? Is it the last one where the World Championship representative comes out of the Brier? There's just a lot of questions in the air. I would say, Scott, I'm 1,000% sure this is not the first time that David Murdoch had been to a Brier.
Yeah.
But obviously the first time in this capacity. The crowd was great. Morning draws had people. Like it was great. The kids with the signs, very good. The trading Skittles. And then whatever his Nestor one was, he was like, hey, inflation, where he wanted more stuff. That was great. The kid with the sign that said school is important, but curling is importanter. Like, really good. Just really good job, London, for all of it. A little rowdy on Friday night, it sounded like. And so, a few breaches of etiquette, if you will, but
Sean, it's the Friday Fun Fest, right?
Friday Fun Fest. Who cares? So, but overall, really good job for London. And I think it's good that David Murdoch saw what appeared to be a very good Brier on the peripherals of it. Obviously, we all know what happened on the ice, but everything around it looked great. For him to see that within the context of his new job, recognize that it's, to me at least, the Brier, the Scotties, is not just about determining who is Canada's world championship rep. It goes beyond that, and there's a significance and importance to some core aspects of it. I'm okay with some changes. It doesn't need to be exactly what it is now. We've seen changes to it. But I think there are just certain core elements that are necessary for these two events. I like to make fun of the Vic essay sometime, which, by the way, he didn't do at the end of the Brier. But there is something about the fabric of this sport in this country and the tradition of it that matters a little bit. And I would hate to see that taken apart too much in pursuit of gold medals or perception that it would make Canada more competitive for gold medals. So I don't know what this brings, but what did you think, Scott, while they were showing David Murdoch sitting there?
He was like just looming over everything like a sword of Damocles. Oh man, I can't wait to be in charge of your high performance system. And his title, Sean, by the way, is Director High Performance.
Oh,
so wow, that's a pretty cool title. Just it was there as like, what is high performance curling in Canada going to look like? Are they going to take a Scottish curling model, which if you're hiring David Murdoch, I don't know why you would be doing anything different.
Sure.
And sponsoring a certain number of athletes to go and train together, form teams out of those athletes. If you tell them, hey, you're a high performance curler, you live in Ottawa now and train at the RA Center full time, you don't have any residency issues with that, or you live in Edmonton, you're training at the Saville, that's your job. It sort of takes the residency requirement out of consideration. And so this is what we all expect.
Yeah.
What's going to be interesting is what the pushback will be like from the athletes. I don't know why Brad Gushue would agree to like be part of that kind of a system. You can say, hey, I've got 5 Brier titles on my chest, right? 5 and bring on the all pro teams, form your pro teams and come at me because I got the crown and I'm not going away till you take it.
Yeah, he could do the Patrick Waugh where he says, I don't hear what David Murdoch says because I got my 2 Olympic medals in my ears.
Yeah.
Like he could do that. But it was interesting to note that if Brad Gushue hadn't won, either Jeff Walker would have had to have actually moved to St. John's instead of the pretending that he was going to last year, or EJ Harnden would have had to move to St. John's, or the team would have had to break up. So their winning certainly delays any movement on that front, and it's probably going to outlive whatever the current residency rules are, them being Team Canada. So that is set to the side. Scott, what they very could do is just say top 5 teams on CTRS rankings, the residency rules no longer apply to you, but everybody else, they still do apply. I see no problem with them just singling out the top 5 within the CTRS points. I wonder if they've tried that before.
Yeah, I don't foresee any issues with that. Yeah, no way.
So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't at all envy David Murdoch's job.
No,
like it's so hard.
His title would be cool to have. His title would be cool to have because that sounds pretty cool. But doing the actual work, no, not great.
No, so he's got to set up a system that is going to satisfy various constituencies while at the same time recognizing that those 2 events fund so much stuff.
Yeah.
That without those revenue generators, it'd be, okay, maybe you want something like what they have in Perth, but then the financial model of Curling Canada fundamentally changes. And can you actually financially support that without the Brier Scotties being the big revenue generators that they are? Who knows? At the same time, too, he does have to think about the juniors, right? Both junior teams were relegated this year at the World Juniors. So that's something to consider. When they moved the World Juniors, the Canadian Juniors to the spring, there was concerns, and the pandemic has certainly disrupted this transition, but the early returns have not been particularly positive for Curling Canada on the World Junior stage. And certainly that some of that is circumstantial, that other teams are very, very good and things happen and you can lose games sometime, but that is going to be a point of concern as well. So a lot of moving parts for David Murdoch to think about, and it's certainly going to give us something to talk about. More things. We have so much to talk about in the summer now.
Yeah, definitely lots to talk about going forward. So yeah, we'll see how the players react, what the plan actually is before, we've sort of decided what we think it will be. Yeah, let's see what the plan actually is. See how the players react to it, and go from there. Right?
Maybe they'll just 50-team Brier Scotties last from November 1st to January 31st.
Well, 50. Let's just say 64. Do it March Madness style.
March Madness style.
One game a week.
Yeah. There you go.
1 game a week, held in 4 regions across the country.
Yeah.
Put them in pods. I like it.
All right, let's do it. We just solved Curling Canada. Boom. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about, and still a lot to come up this curling season. We still have World Championships to get through, a couple more Grand Slams as well. So please do subscribe if you have not yet to follow along with the rest of the season and what is going to be a very eventful off season. Wherever you get your pods, likes, rates, comments, all that good stuff helps other people find the show. You can head on over to GameOfStonesPod.com. All past episodes are there under the episode tab. Our new merch store is up and running. I placed an order and it was already shipped. I placed it on Sunday just after the final. This is Tuesday. It has shipped. I haven't gotten it yet. Scott, behind you, I can see the cap on your couch there. Yes. The dad hat is there. I got a couple of the mugs. We have a glossy mug, the enamel mug. I got another hoodie because obviously I need another one for reasons. So I am very excited to get the stuff, and I like the way the new store looks, so do head on over to check that one out.
Yeah, go check it out and let us know if there's anything that we don't have that you'd like. That dad hat there, Sean, is actually for our dad. So
nice.
Yeah,
it's a literal dad hat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And of course, you can follow along with everything we got going on social media at Game of Stones Pod, Twitter and Instagram, Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook, Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. If you want to reach out, do head on over to the Instagram page and check out Twitter. We are going to extend our giveaway for the Elsa Craig print. We're going to extend it until next Monday, which is the 20th of March. Am I right on this, Scott?
On the 20th of March, Canada plays Scotland at the Women's World Championship. And I thought, what better time to draw the winner than after that game against Scotland? So that's what we'll be doing. Go check out our Instagram at GameStonesPod. on Instagram, and I'll be boosting that so it's at the top of our profile.
Yeah.
Pinning it at the top of our profile. Go check it out. It's a pretty cool print. I actually have it on my dining room table now. It goes quite nicely with the tulips that we had there. So
nice. Very nice. Very spring-like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so we're extending that because we didn't put it up as early as we wanted to. So we want to make sure everybody has enough time to look at that, enter into the giveaway. And again, we are going to cover the cost of getting it to you. So that is not a concern.
Yeah.
There's no cost to you. So
Sean, if anybody wants to take a look at Daniel's website, I will be seeing him next week. So in person. So, you see something that maybe catches your eye, let me know about it and let him know about it. And, we'll see what we can do to help move that along.
Yeah, and I'll put his website down in the show notes too, if you want to just click on over and see all the work he's got going on there. So there you have it. So with that, congratulations to Brad Gushue. We'll see him in just over 2 weeks here in Ottawa for the 2023 World Curling Championship. But before that, our attention turns to Sweden for the Women's World Curling Championship. And that's what we will talk about later this week when we join you again. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.